I rather like creatures. I have a little cat myself, although my parents seem to have stolen her. But I could not cause harm to an animal. And so for me, I hate to say it, hunting, shooting, fishing just isn't up my strasse. I don't necessarily think people who do it are bad people, though. And sometimes you have to control certain animal populations. You know, Forest of Dean, got a load of wild boar out there, and they taste pretty nice. But I do believe that we really are custodians of this planet, and the first sign of sociopathy and psychopathy is if you are more than willing to harm an animal. And so I fairly welcome some of what Labour are saying in their protecting animals in this new strategy. Puppy farm bans, good. I mean, a lot of these little poor wee pups are kept in awful conditions and then sold on the black market, and oh, it's just cruel. You know, when I lived, this is a ghoulish story, when I lived in Kenya, there was this thing that people would do where they would have a little they'd stand around on the roadsides with sort of crates of very cute little kittens or very cute little puppies. And apparently they were feeding the wee babies food with tiny bits of glass in. So you get it and then it dies. And then you have to go back and get a second one. I mean, if that's true, that is just evil. But my big issue with this is if you're going to, and it's quite a comprehensive list of things that the government doesn't want people to do anymore, but they've really gone after the British countryside pursuits. And they've left out for me the most egregious animal rights abuse that we have in this country, which to me is the slaughter of animals which aren't pre-stunned. I just think that that is monstrous, medieval, barbaric, and it ain't in our culture. But they haven't touched it, and they probably haven't touched it for a reason. Let's speak to Dominic Dyer, who's an animal welfare campaigner, policy advisor to the Born Free Foundation. Dominic, great to have you on. First of all, let's talk about trail hunts being banned. People are saying this is a war on the countryside. Explain to us what trail hunting is and whether this is a good thing, that it's no longer going to be allowed to take place.
Yeah, I think sometimes you need to take the politics out of this, which is a bit difficult when you see the Telegraph headline today and the way the Countryside Alliance and other organisations come to this issue. The Labour Party, when it was in government with Tony Blair, introduced the Hunting Act back in 2004. So it's been on the legislative, you know, in terms of law for 20 years. To be fair, when Tony Blair sort of was involved in this debate, I think he was half-hearted about wanting to do it. There were lots of issues about dividing town and country and where Labour were. And when the policy was implemented, it had more holes than a Swiss cheese. And on that basis, what's happened is that lots of hunts that wanted to continue to hunt have found a loophole to be able to do so. And that then causes bigger problems in the countryside. So trail hunting really is the smokescreen for allowing the continued use of hounds to track down and kill foxes. And the reason for that is you use an animal-based scent and you drag it along so that the foxes, you know, this is a scent from a fox primarily is what's used, and that means that the hounds get that scent and they will follow that scent. But if they come across a wild fox when they're chasing, they will go after the wild fox. It's all but impossible to stop that happening, and then the animal is killed. Now that's breaking the law, and the hunts know that. And this is the problem. And then you have the hunt sabs go out and they confront the hunts, and then the police have to go out and try and deal with all of this. And actually, a lot of the pressure for change, Alex, has come from the police who said, listen, this is making our life really difficult, a lot of resources, a lot of time, a lot of court cases and other problems coming about. What we need is clarity within the law. And so actually, we need to go back and look at the legislation and see if we need to change it to say, actually, this practice is actually being used to undermine what the purpose of the act was. Now, then you come to a point and you say, well, does that mean you're stopping a practice in the countryside that people should be able to do? Tradition and all the issues that, you know, people debate, and that's a fair discussion to have, and it's coming out today. And my response to that is, listen, the hunts should have changed the way they do things, and some hunts did, some hunts did not. If you want to hunt in the countryside, there's a way of doing it that doesn't cause this problem, and that is to use bloodhounds rather than foxhounds, and you basically drag along a non-based animal scent. And the bloodhounds, much smaller number of animals, maybe 6-10 animals, they don't act in the same way. Part of the problem with the foxhounds is if you've got 50, 60 foxhounds, they're very difficult to control. Right. When they go after a scent, they move, and they move fast. So what happens is they go across roads, across railway lines, they go into people's gardens, they've killed their pets. It can be a real havoc for the people living in the country communities, and it brings about wildlife criminal activity.
So basically, the sort of tradition of hunting, you know, get your horn out, your red jacket, your shiny boots, that can still carry on.
It can do it, but you have to change, and some of the hunts didn't want to change. Now, a lot of them have gone out of business because it's very difficult to do this, and the other issue is that I care a lot about dogs. I do a lot of dog welfare stuff. So a lot of people say to me, oh, what about all the dogs and how are they treated? A lot of these animals are not treated that well.
Yeah, and then they basically live on mass in cages and stuff, and are sort of deprived food before they go out hunting. And
yeah, and they are shot with bolt guns and things like that when they no longer can be hunting, or if they get injured. And they're not pets. They're very difficult to rehome as well because of the nature of what they do. So I would like to see big packs of foxhounds being, you know, basically consigned to history in time. It can't all immediately. I'd like to see hunts continue using bloodhounds and following non-based animal scents, and people can enjoy the pursuit and all that goes with it without the cruelty, without the criminality, and without the problems. I think we need a debate around that, and I hope what the government has started today will force the hunts who are doing what they're doing to reconsider. So I think that's a good place for us to have a debate, rather than fight about this being, you know, an attack on the country.
I must admit, Dominic, everything you've said, I just completely concur with. And that's, I live in the countryside now. I think the tradition of hunting should remain, but everything can adapt. And I actually, you know,
20
fully
years
concur.
has given us enough time to do that. So I think, I hope today, and I think the hunts are reacting to that, and quite a lot of them will adapt. So let's see where that goes.
Let's see where it goes. Okay, good. We've done trail hunts.
Yeah,
now, the other elements of welfare in farming, which is a subject really close to my heart. I personally only ever go to farm shops and buy from local farms where I am fairly certain that there's been high welfare standards, and also where I know that the meat is of very good quality. I don't want my animals sort of laced with antibiotics. I like them to have a pastoral existence. And the great thing about the United Kingdom is we've always had some of the highest animal welfare standards in the world. And again, I'm not against at all the idea is that we should ban cages for chickens. When you see the video, these poor blimmin' creatures, bold, you know, eating each other and eating themselves and like stepping over a dead one, it's just horrible. It's really not nice. And crates for pigs, I understand the logic behind, you know, sows are notoriously bad about, you know, rolling over on their own babies. But then to have a pig who, for however many days, desperately wants to nurse its young, and it can't even turn around, it can only lie down or stand up, is evil. I was totally against, you know, veal crates. We don't have that in the United Kingdom, thankfully enough. So again, with these measures, I think they're very important. But of course, what people will say is, it's going to increase the price of food. My argument is, well, guess what? Food is expensive to make, and especially meat. And we should all become a little bit more conditioned to not wasting meat. I think we live in a culture now where people will buy 4 chicken breasts, you know, for cheap at a supermarket, eat one, the other 3 go green in the fridge, and they just chuck it away. And I'm like, that's life. That was a living creature. But if you are going to turn around and sort of improve welfare across all farming, you've got to do something about foreign imports who don't have to subscribe to the same standards. And you've got to go back to the bare basics of home economics with the public, because now people are so used to be able to go down to Chicken Cottage or whatever, buy something for cheap. And like I said, I think, you know, the price of meat especially has been artificially low for way too young. When I think about, you know, growing up the way my grandma would cook, you buy a whole chicken, you make that thing last a week, you make soup, you make stock, you make a casserole, you roast it, you know, you can feed a load of people with 1 chicken for multiple days, but people don't have those skills anymore.
No, and I think there's 2 things here, isn't there? Firstly, it would do us all good to lower our meat consumption a bit, but eat higher welfare meat. Because that's a good, healthy thing to do for our diet anyway, so let's be clear about it. You're right, we've been in a situation where we've seen the quality and the standards forced down to lower the cost and availability and eat more of this stuff, more than we actually need in our diet. So yeah, I think that's an issue. And I think you've got to be fair to farmers, though. You've got to transition these changes in a way that you're not going to put them out of business. It's a difficult business to be in. I think most farmers do want to improve the welfare systems in which they operate. I think the public at large want to do that as well. And when we see these, you know, videos of what's going on in slaughterhouses and things that emerge into the media, people get generally angry about that, saying actually, you know, and this might have been RSPCA certified and other programs that meant to tell us that, you know, Red Tractor that are telling us that this is actually a good thing, and actually in some cases that's not what's happening. But you do have to look at what we're importing as well. You know, we've got this American trade deal situation where we could be chlorinated chicken and, you know, meat with hormones added and antibiotics and all these things you're familiar with. we need proper debates about that. So we need to support farmers in this country transition to better welfare systems. We need people to consider the implications of what they're buying, and if they're actually spending a bit more money for a better welfare system, that's good for them, it's good for the environment, good for animals, so they should consider that. And the supermarkets need to really work on this as well, because they have so much control over the supply chain. But I think most people would accept what the government's looking at with regards to farrowing crates, or looking at what hens are kept in these larger crate systems, or just looking at the use of CO2 for stunning and killing, or even improving the way we kill farm fish as well. There's a lot of things there that we should be able to look at, and I hope politicians won't differ too much on that.
Yeah, do you know, so you've actually sort of nicely queued up the last thing I wanted to ask you about, which is, for me, the thing that sticks in my craw is the fact that we still have non-stunned animal slaughter, or partially stunned animal slaughter. And I know it's not our culture, it's unnecessarily barbaric. I think we should come out and just ban it. And when I say that, there was analysis done about animal welfare, Food Standards Agency, Halal Monitoring Committee, I've got it in front of me. When you've got non-stunned halal meat, it isn't just the fact that they're not stunning the animals. You look at the percentages here when it comes to failed inspections, it comes to about 15% of slaughterhouses fail their inspections overall. When it comes to non-stunned halal, that's over 50%. When it comes to major animal hygiene issues in non-stunned halal, that goes up to 70% of slaughterhouses. Major animal welfare issues, you're talking around 20 to 25% of animals, which is more than double the incidence with non-halal slaughterhouses. The government hasn't gone anywhere near that. And I think they're wrong. If they really care and want to be the party of animal welfare, they need to stop worrying about who they might upset along the way.
No, I agree, but to be fair, the last government didn't touch it either.
No, government. Listen, this isn't about a party political thing with me. I didn't vote for the last government either, by the way.
And this covers both kosher and Muslim. So, this is halal and kosher. So it's Muslim and Jewish communities that you have to address those concerns with. And that's partly why governments have tended to avoid it. To be fair to RSPCA and other organisations over the years, they have highlighted their genuine concerns about this. It's something that I talk about, because people come to me all the time to animal welfare campaign going, well, why are you being silent on this? And I'm very happy to talk about it and to say, actually, I think government should act on this. So I think there is an omission here. I think there's a genuine debate. I would say that actually what's coming out of today is focusing attention on it. And I think there needs to be unity across parties on this, though. And what you need to do is you need to take the sort of ethnicity and the religious issues out of it and actually look at it and say, listen, we've got to deal with this because it's a problem. And it's an anomaly in our whole sort of slaughter system that we have kosher and halal, and those systems allow these methods. So we have to deal with it. So I agree with you. There are other omissions in here too, and I'll say it while I'm on. There are some things that I think we should sort out. Why is it, for example, that we haven't dealt with the use of killing of black bears in Canada to make cats for the Coldstream Guards? Why are we still doing that? I've been in Parliament. We've got a brilliant synthetic hat that, a producer in Italy that makes brilliant fur has actually said to the MOD they would give them this for nothing, effectively, millions of pounds worth of product. Just stop importing these bear fur pelts from trophy hunters in Canada. We don't have the trophy hunting issue's not been addressed here either. Last government committed to actually ending the import of wild animal trophies shot in Africa and other countries. This government has said they would do the same. It's not here. Greyhound racing. Listen, I don't like greyhound racing at all. I think it's cruel. I think it's had its day. I think the vast majority of all the animal welfare organisations and the broader public would like to see it end. And the government's doing nothing about that. So there are things in here, you're right, kosher, halal, but other things that I'd like to see in here as well. And I think this needs to spark a debate. One thing, Alex, I would say is that this crosses all political boundaries. It does. Reform voters care about this as much as Green voters care about this.
You're right. It's not an issue. I could talk to you all day, Dominic. I really could. I've got even more questions for you, but I've run out of time. Wanted to ask about dog licences, everything.
Absolutely. Lots to do on dogs as well. But this is a start here.
Yeah, it's a start. Dominic, we'll have to catch up again because I want to talk about this subject more. I've got loads of questions, but we've got to leave it there because I'm